Samhain, whichever way you choose to approach the idea that this is the season of spirits, we will, in keeping with that theme, now remind you that the title of this transmission is Ghosts. Now, we do not necessarily say this to make you feel spooky or scared, but to simply go through all the different ways in which individuals that are physically alive may experience what they perceive to be ghosts. So we will start with the idea that is more traditional, in the sense of a spirit that is capable of lowering its vibration enough to be perceived by the senses of the living, that you typically refer to as a ghost, a spirit, when it appears in your world, in your reality. The idea being that spirits who pass over, as you say, who die, who transition, may not always go all the way for a variety of reasons. Some may have unfinished business on earth. Some, because of their belief systems, may not have had a particular expectation or assumption of what they would experience in the so-called afterlife, and thus be a little bit confused about where they are. Some even may not even know they're dead and are wandering, looking for reasons why no one can hear them or see them. But now and then, either due to a lowering of their vibrational frequency, sort of similar to the idea of invisible ultraviolet light lowering its frequency to become visible as part of the visible spectrum of light, going down into violet and blue and so on and so forth. If they lower their frequency, they may become visible to those in the physical realm, or those in the physical realm may have enough sensitivity to perceive that spirit, even though it may not always be visible to everyone. But for some reason, they are still closely connected energetically to the physical realm of Earth, due to some of the reasons we have said or other reasons, and thus are still in their mind living among you, wandering among you, occupying the old houses, so on and so forth, what you typically refer to as a haunting, which doesn't in any way, shape, or form have to be malicious. Simply another person in another state, living in a place among the living. But the idea is that in seeing these beings, there is no way without communicating with them to know the reason why they may still be in what is referred to as the lower astral realm, very close to the vibration of physical reality, lowering their vibration enough to be perceived by physical beings. And this is the older and original definition of an exorcist, sort of a spirit psychologist, to communicate, find out why that being is in that state, why they're still lingering around Earth, which doesn't always have to be for a negative reason. Sometimes, when spirits cross over, and they act, in a sense, as guardians, spirit guides, for those who are still living, there may be reasons why they can learn to lower their vibration, to interact with the living in certain ways, even to the degree of appearing solid as a living physical being. This takes some skill and some practice on the part of spirits to do this, because once you are in spirit and in that high frequency vibration that is generally invisible to the living, it is actually not as natural for a spirit to go back down into the lower vibrations and become perceivable to the living. But there are those who may have reason to do so, to appear to the living in certain ways, to deliver messages, or perhaps as a protector, to alert living people to certain ideas, certain situations and circumstances, be it dangerous or not. So those spirits may have a high degree of need to lower their vibration to interact with the living and be perceived as living people until such time as they raise their vibration again and vanish before your eyes. And so there may be great need to do this, or they may simply have chosen to practice the ability of raising and lowering their vibration in order to interact with the living for a variety of their own reasons, or agreements they may have made with the living people with whom they interact. Now, beyond the idea of it actually being a spirit, a ghost per se, that you're interacting with, that is live in real time, as you say, there may be other effects that exist that can be interpreted as seeing a ghost. And one of them is the idea that in the fabric of space-time, everything is recorded. You might say, again, as people on your planet often name it, the Akashic records have a kind of video sort of ability to record things as well as audio or pure information. And all that information is available here and now because everything exists here and now. So again, for those that might be sensitive enough, might extend their senses far enough vibrationally to pick up on certain things that may have happened, linearly speaking, in the past, and perceive the recording, it's etched itself into the fabric of space and time. They may be seeing a recording of sorts, an echo of sorts of things that have been, or even will be, in your linear framework, and perceive that as a living ghost, even though it is simply an echo, a recording, something etched into the fabric of space-time, and is no longer actually present. These kinds of perceptions will usually appear to be repeatable. In other words, a person may say, oh yes, this place is haunted, and at midnight, every 3 days, you see this woman walking down the hallway into this room, and so on and so forth. And if that keeps repeating, it might not be what would be termed a living presence. It might actually be a recording, repeating over and over again when the conditions are right to trigger it, or when the conditions are right in a person's senses to perceive it. So a lot of things that repeat themselves that way may actually not be a living presence. It might be, but it may not be, because it could simply be etched into the fabric of space-time and repeating on a loop. Another way that people might perceive the idea of a ghost that is not a ghost in the classic sense is the idea of peering into parallel realities. Sometimes the so-called barriers between one reality and another will overlap, will weaken, will align vibrationally in some way, shape, or form to allow a person from your reality to actually perceive, although perhaps faintly and dimly, people in other realities. And therefore, in suddenly seeing an apparition wandering through your reality, you might perceive it or think it to be a ghost of someone who has passed over, but in fact you are actually seeing a faint representation of a person in another reality who is just going about their business, but may seem to you to be a ghost. And they may be able to perceive you that way at that moment as well, and go back to their friends and family with tales of having seen this ghost. And they're just describing you, because again, the veils between the different realities may have weakened for some reason at that point, because these fluctuations do often happen. There are doorways and portals that open to different dimensions on a regular basis, and some of them are random, and sometimes these openings and closings can allow one in your reality to peer into other realities temporarily until they close again. And sometimes these are interpreted as spirits and ghosts when they are not, in the classic sense, such a thing. But the idea of this season is to allow yourself to open up to the potential communication that can exist between you and spirits, spirit guides, family members who may have passed on, soul family groups who may never have even incarnated. It is the ability of your senses to stretch into that realm, especially if someone close to you has died, and is encouraging you to stretch your senses to connect with them in the spirit realm. This is the perfect season and timing to allow yourself to practice this. And this will be the subject of our meditation today, to give you an opportunity to do so. So, allow yourselves during your Halloween season while having fun, playing scary, while having fun being spooked out, while having fun imagining all sorts of strange apparitions and so on and so forth. Keep in a corner of your mind the realization that this, in the vibrational cycles of Earth, is also when the veils are thin between the physical and the non-physical. Because remember, the physical is just a projection of consciousness. You yourselves, in a sense, are projections of consciousness as physical beings. So you yourselves, in a sense, are all ghosts, because your natural state is as a spirit, and you are just pretending to be in a physical, solid reality. So you are all ghosts in physical reality, which itself is a ghostly apparition of a consciousness idea that you are exploring. So in remembering that, it can amplify your ability to remember that all of these spirits are right with you and you are right with them, still in spirit with them, while dreaming that you are not. Allow yourself the opportunity to feel that and maintain that connection and increase that connection between yourself and the spirit realm, becoming more lucid and conscious about the fact that physical reality is, in a sense, just an apparition that you're playing around in. And allow yourself this opportunity, because as we do approach the idea of the window of contact and the increase in the splitting prism into different parallel versions of Earth, maintaining and increasing your connection to the spirit realm that you occupy now, right now, as your natural state, will serve you in a variety of ways that we will go into the closer we approach to the beginning of the window of open contact, and serve you with the idea of making contact, because many extraterrestrial beings are extra-dimensional beings and actually have attributes, just as our civilization does, of both physicality and spirit. And thus, the stronger you connect to the fact that you are a spirit, as you say, not so much a human having a spiritual experience, but a spirit having a human experience, you can identify with us more strongly every day and allow the idea of open contact to be a broader experience with many different kinds of beings who are not just physical extraterrestrials in the way that you think of us, but occupy many different dimensional planes just as you do, who are simply aware of the occupation of those planes just as you can become. And therefore blending and melding and merging the idea of physical and spirit in a way that allow you a great deal of freedom, a great deal of expression, and a great deal of being your true self and expanding what that really means in your world. So be the ghosts in this season that are physical, and have fun when we do our meditation to expand your senses and stretch your senses into the realm of spirit.
Energy or in spirit level? Does human personality exist in spirit also?
Human personality can be projected from spirit. It doesn't really exist for the being in the same way that it does when you are experiencing a physical life. But the strength of the belief does have effects in energy and can echo into the lower astral realms easily, because the material of the lower astral is so vibrationally close to physical materiality. So the strength of a belief, the energy put into it, into holding it to be true, can ripple into the astral realm and to some degree a little bit leak into the etheric shell. Therefore, it can still have consequences, even though the being itself may not be experiencing those things in exactly the same way that it did when it was physical and holding on to those beliefs. But there is a gray area, a buffer zone, in which certain beliefs in physical reality can still have, to some degree, ripple effects or consequences in the lower astral vibrations.
And so those individuals who have passed, are in a low vibrational state, they're still wandering Earth in a sense, having negative emotions, they don't want to reincarnate, so they just wander around as ghosts in their miserable emotions, and they're very lonely. What can we do to help those beings?
Always send love, always send light, and allow yourself in a state of appreciation and gratitude for their existence to send a vibration that speaks of and shows of telepathically with images the idea of the beauty and glory of the spirit world, the full color. Send them that energy and allow them to experience whatever they're willing to absorb. But again, just like anything in physical reality, whatever you share with them doesn't mean you get to control or decide what they do with it. What they do with it is none of your business, because they have their own path, just like any physical being still. So the idea is to send them those images of a beautiful place, of their true self, their self-empowerment, wrap them in unconditional love to allow them to understand what the vibration of the spirit world is actually like, but then let them do with whatever you send, with whatever they will do with it.
This person is saying her grandmother passed away, and then she had a dream where she woke in the middle of the night and saw her as light. But she wasn't sure if it was a dream or not since she was so sleepy. Was the person dreaming or were they awake? And how can you tell when something is real?
Well, again, the idea that it may have partially occurred in a dream state or a partial dream state is simply an indication that it might be easier for the spirit to reach you in that state when some of your physical thought process is kind of out of the way or on hold. So it's still real. It's just that it might be an easier state for the spirit to make a connection in. So it may feel a little bit dreamy, a little bit out of physical reality. That doesn't mean it's not real.
And previously you said that in our near future, we'll be able to interact more with our loved ones who have departed. And can you expand on that? And why is it that some people have that ability now?
Well, again, either because it's part of their theme that they chose to experience in this life, or they chose to experience something that made their senses a little bit more acute than most. And again, because again, it's approaching the time for these things to be considered, that in and of itself can make the so-called barriers between physical and non-physical reality a little bit more transparent, in the same way that approaching death in physical life can make your senses more acute to the spirit world. Collectively, approaching certain kinds of thresholds where you're considering the expansion of consciousness and the existence of spirits and so on and so forth can actually allow many people within the physical collective to be able to be more sensitive to the fact that spirits are all around you and make it easier for you to start perceiving them.
How about lucid dreaming and seeing ghosts? How can this, or connecting with dead people, how can one use lucid dreaming in order to have a more heightened experience?
Well, again, in general, lucid dreaming is an experience you're having when you are aware of the fact that you are actually a spirit. Therefore, it's easier to connect to the spirit world because in a lucid dream, you are actually being more of your natural self.
Interesting. Would it help to like call out the name of the person that you want to connect with, or you just have to think of them while you're in a lucid dream?
You can use whatever technique works best for you.
Okay. Is it dangerous to communicate with spirits through the Ouija board? This person's friend had contacted something, but I think it was just an animal spirit or something, since it didn't make much sense to the other person.
Let me put it this way. You have certain symbols on your planet that have certain collective definitions attached to them, so to speak. So it's not in general dangerous, but the idea of the way most people in your society think of the Ouija board actually allows them to expand the idea into a more negative vibration, because that's what you bring to it going in for the most part. So in other words, that you've set yourself up by defining the Ouija board as a dangerous instrument. Therefore, that can create the sensation of connecting to ideas or things or entities that are less than ideal vibrationally. But it's not because connecting to spirit is dangerous, and it's not intrinsically because of the device that may be used as a permission slip to do so, but because of the definition you've imparted to that device that may lower your vibration and make you more aware of matching lower vibrational entities.
And this person is saying, my understanding is that chakras are of the etheric body, while ghosts are basically an astral body on the astral plane. Can you clarify this?
For the most part, what you perceive as a ghost is usually in the astral plane, yes. But the idea of the chakras is simply a physical manifestation of certain patterns of energy that go all the way up beyond the astral into the etheric and beyond. It's just the physical representation of the crystallization of certain consciousness patterns and energy connections that you have to the higher forms of yourself.
And are all ghosts that appear to humans originally from Earth, or do some beings come there from throughout the galaxy to join our etheric plane? Did any Greys die in our Earth timeline and become ghosts and or Anunnaki?
This is rare, but the answer in general is yes, it's possible.
Fascinating. And can our spirit guides appear as ghosts? Can they take on a physical ghost body in our reality? And if so, can they travel back and forth from the spirit realm to the body when they choose to?
Those that are very accomplished in doing that, yes, they can, and many times have. There are, again, certain stories that exist in your society where someone assumed they were interacting with a physical being who was helping them in some way, shape, or form, and later discovered that it turned out to actually be a ghost, a spirit guide, or what have you, that was simply capable of lowering their frequency long enough to be able to actually physically assist the living person. So yes, it's possible, and many spirits are accomplished in doing that. It's not necessarily absolutely common that spirits do that, for they may all have different proclivities in terms of what it is they feel necessary to learn to do, because it is an accomplishment to learn to go back and forth that easily between non-physical and physical reality. But some are quite adept at it.
Interesting. This person is saying that their understanding is that when our physical earthly body dies, we move to another dimension. From that new dimension, do we remember our earthly experience and those of our fellow humans that we left behind? Do we see their grief and try to console them by visiting them? Can our loved ones that have passed on manipulate electricity and move things to let us know they're visiting? If we don't remember our earthly experience, how do we learn from it?
No, you remember everything. Again, you don't lose anything. You have more heightened awareness of every single second of your experience on Earth. Every single second. You lose nothing. So yes, the answer is yes. Spirits can do the things that you're talking about. Again, depending upon how adept they are at doing that or how necessary it is for them to do those things.
Do some people practice being ghosts during different states, such as dreams or death edits or pre-birth?
Yes. Many people practice being spirit guides for the time when they will actually function as such, when you are in the dream state, when you're out of your body, so to speak.
And you've mentioned that some observations of ghosts are actually events which have been etched onto the fabric of space-time and are replaying themselves. What causes events to be recorded like this, and what triggers the replays?
Well, again, remember, nothing is lost. Information is everywhere. So the idea is that everything is accessible here and now from anything that's ever happened or will happen in any parallel reality. It just depends on your focus. The idea of what may cause a replay may be the energy of the person that is interacting with that particular frequency for some reason. Many things can trigger such a thing. collective consciousness can do it based on stories they've been told and legends they've been told about what it is they expect to experience in a particular location. That can trigger it. But many things can trigger it. It's, again, just like simply going to a place or being in a state where something is recorded and suddenly, for some reason, being of the correct vibration to suddenly have a replay.
Okay. And are there ghosts in the White House?
Yes.
Can you say anything else about it?
All we are allowed to say is that Dolly Madison often visits.
Interesting. So, well, this session, we pretty much focused on all the questions about ghosts and spirits and everything. And in the future, we'll come back to some other questions. But thank you so much for all your sharing today and helping us have a happy Halloween.
We wish you all a happy Halloween in the spirit of the season. And do remember that you are all spirits having a human experience. And on that note, please enjoy your upcoming meditation.